everybody, it's Mofi and welcome back to another video. In today's video I will be going over the best way to use Apex Legends Season 10 weapon, the Rampage. I hope you guys enjoy this video and please consider dropping a like and subscribing as it does help out the channel a lot. For the first part, I'll show how the Rampage works for long range and how it compares to the R301 and Flatline. Next, I'll be showing off how it stacks up against the R301 and Flatline at medium range. And finally, I'll be testing how the Rampage does against the two at close range. So without further ado, let's get right into it. First off, I'm going to test the long range capability of this weapon. So I will be using only 3x sights for this and no extra attachments, just so that it doesn't get in any way of affecting how the gun shoots. So we're going to be using that for long range, and I'll just be holding down on the trigger. For our R301 and Flatline, I will have them on single fire, so I will have to like tap fire them. And I guess I'll do the same for the Rampage. I'll start now. That was how the recoil was for the Rampage, with very slight adjustments to how I was controlling it. I'll now be showing how it compares with the R301. That was how I was controlling R301 with very slight adjustments. If you can compare the two, the Rampage does have a little bit more of a shaky effect with the same amount of control on my mouse. And I was very slightly moving it. For the R301, it does tend to stay in the same area, and the Rampage tends to go top right and top bottom of the box, and generally speaking is not the best for long range, but is more consistent in how the shots curve over. But besides that, the R301, it does have better control for hitting in the same area, but it's worse for when you're trying to hit specific targets moving. So I'd say for players standing still, it's easier to control with the R301, but for players who are moving around, it is easier to control with the Rampage. Now I'll be showing how it compares with the Flatline at long range. Same again with no attachments besides the 3x sight. Those were very slight adjustments I was making to my mouse, and the Rampage tends to go more to the right, as you could see from the previous clip, and the Flatline tends to go more to the left and the top, which makes the Flatline a little bit harder to control, as the Rampage could easily be moved to the left side, but is around the middle section where you could hit headshots and body shots. I would say overall the Rampage is easier to control. While the Flatline is good for long range, I don't think it's as good as the Rampage for hitting moving targets, but I think overall the Rampage just wins in both the standing targets and moving targets. Now we'll be showing the R301 versus the Rampage at medium range and how they compare. We will be using those tiles right there, so let's get right to it. So same with the long range clip, when you are using the R301 with a standing target, it is quite easy to hit it, and I think with the Rampage it is more difficult due to the fact that it moves scattered around the box and has a harder time of actually hitting in the same exact area with only minor adjustments to keep it inside the box. And I think overall the R301 is better for both moving and standing, and Rampage is probably for the less skilled player who maybe doesn't have the best adjustments, and I guess it could be more random for them. So that's how the R301 and the Rampage stand against each other at medium range. Next is the Flatline versus the Rampage at medium range and how they compare. Overall, I do think that the Flatline wins in this category over the Rampage. It is more consistent towards the center of the box, and the Rampage does tend to go on the top or slash the higher part of the box. The Rampage is slightly harder to control, but I think for more skilled players, the Rampage is probably a better choice due to the fact that it has a higher damage per second output if you're hitting more shots. And but if you are a less skilled player, I recommend using the Flatline from medium range, only because it does hit around the center head level easier, and it is probably going to be easier for you to control from that range. Let me show you how the R301 and Rampage compare at close range. Now, I don't know if you saw what I saw, but I definitely see the R301 staying at the center significantly more than the Rampage. I would argue that the R301 is better, especially when it comes to moving, as well as standing targets. So, compared that to the Rampage, I would say that the Rampage didn't do the job as well. I was giving minor adjustments, but as you could have seen before, the Rampage was going off very much and was going towards the top and right a lot more than the R301 was. So I would say overall the R301 wins this and probably wins the rest of the categories except for long range. I would say the Rampage does best when it comes to long range. Finally, before we get to the discussion part of the video, I'll show you how the Flatline and Rampage compare at close range. Now, as you see, I do think that the Flatline is better overall, just because of the fact that it does stay around the center more, and the Rampage tends to go up higher with its recoil pattern. And I do think for less skilled players, the Flatline might be a more viable choice, especially when it gets closer to the target, if you have first shot accuracy. And for more skilled players, I think even then the Flatline does win in that case, especially for if you're using the auto part of the weapon. So I do think overall the Flatline and R301 win against the Rampage when it comes to close range, but I do think that the Rampage wins against both the Flatline and the R301 at a long range. Last and finally, I'll be giving my thoughts on the weapon and how it can be used the best way possible. Overall, as a weapon, I would give the Rampage a 6 out of 10. For an LMG, I think it does great at its job, and for it being very similar to an AR but stacked up against these two ARs in the game, the Rampage does lose. I think if they were able to keep the gun in the game the way it is, it could be a great replacement for the Spitfire, as that weapon is now a care package weapon. In the end, I do think Respawn is doing a great job with the weapon pool and is trying to balance it to a good extent. I think the best way to use the Rampage is most likely being around middle range and using a 2x scope or 1x scope. I do recommend spraying the weapon and holding down on the trigger when using it, as it does have a higher DPS when doing so. Anyway guys, if you guys did enjoy this video, please consider dropping a like and subscribing, as it will help the channel a lot. And I hope you guys did enjoy this video, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace.